Welcome to Silvachar's Biochar Highway series with Kevin Smith.
Biochar specifically is made from organic material. So if someone says, I'm selling biochar, the very first thing you should say is, what are you making it out of? It's like, oh, waste products. What waste product? From the CSRD or the local, but what? Well, they're mattresses. But I wouldn't want to use that in my garden, okay? Because you're going to have heavy metals, you can have more silicas and stuff like that you don't necessarily want in your food. But road surfaces and what? That's a fantastic application for that. Steam generation, electrical engine generation. And our biochar is made from organic wood waste, local forestry wood waste. And it's widely accepted around the world that wood or biochar made from wood provides the highest quality biochar. You can make it out of coconut shells, rice husks, leaves, grass, manure, anything organic. Like I said, you cook it, you're going to get biochar, but it's accepted that hard and soft woods make the highest quality, and that's because of the cell structure of wood. So when you take that wood and you put it through a reactor, or you could do this in a backyard, it's just harder to regulate. Basically, a low oxygen environment at high temperatures, what happens is the gases are heated up and escape from the wood, and all those cells that had gases and oils and whatnot in that, they're cracked open, the gases escape, and when those gases reach oxygen, you get combustion. Okay, so you've heard of like flame-capped kilns or a burn barrel. When you see a burn barrel, you always see the flame at the top, right? That's because the gases are coming up and they're combusting with the meat oxygen. If you allow the oxygen down around the wood where the gas is coming out, then you get combustion of the carbon. But what we do is we just burn higher above the product itself, so what's left is just a skeleton of pure carbon. And that is what biochar is. So I was starting talking about carbon filters, right? We're basically taking that same technology and applying it to your soil so that when you apply any type of fertilizer, compost, manure, whatever you want to apply to it, when it decomposes and filters through the biochar holds onto it, soaking it up like a sponge. Then when you add water, you're not washing away all your nutrients. Typically, you lose 50 to 60% of your nutrients just through leaching, through overwater. And often we're having watering restrictions, so we can't even water. And so another benefit of biochar is it absorbs water, retains it longer as well. So you don't see those big peaks in growth through that after rain event. You might next 3 days you see a big spike and then it starts petering off again. 4 days later, it's starting to dry up again. So what biochar can do is level out those ups and downs so that it retains that water longer to the next rain event. And so it can reduce your water. In Kenya, Africa, they're reducing their water use by 75%, while at the same time increasing their crop yield by 30%. So that's significant. Instead of going to the river 4 times a day, you're going only once. In the place where we're using city water, that's significant. Now, obviously, the amount of replacing water and nutrients depends on the volume of biochar added to your soil. And 5 to 10%, that's acceptable. More than that, you might see a little bit more, but you might find that you see just as much advancement in your productivity between 3 to 5% as you do in 10%. Therefore, save some money, keep it at 3 to 5 and put that biochar somewhere else. See benefits everywhere else as well. 1 cubic inch of this as the surface area of a football field. I can't wrap my head around that. I don't. Like when I think I'm like, okay, so if I took it, can I spread it out like peanut butter? It would cover a football field. I can't wrap my head around that. I just had a chicken farmer take biochar and they applied it to the below the bedding of their chicken coop. Okay, and I told him try 5%. He's like, no, I'm gonna go big or go home. We need 20%. I'm like, okay. So he applied it. He ended up having to put over, I don't know how many thousand liters of water down in order to get the moisture into the soil. He wanted to dry things out so it didn't get cakey and stuff like that. He had to add water so that it wasn't so dry. Okay, so that's its ability to retain water. you can see this little root wad here. What happens with the roots is it's not that they have a mind where they're like, oh, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there. They respond to the water and the nutrients levels within the soil. And so they go toward richer areas, providing the nutrients that they need. And so if you do plant in a biochar container and you deroot it, you will find that the little fine root hairs are clinging on to little chunks of biochar because the root hairs tapped into it like a bank account. And when the rains came, it filled up, that's their bank account. And then when it was drying out, they just keep pulling. And so instead of going deeper and deeper and looking for nutrients and water, they can focus more on growing up because they have it. Having said that, you will find more root mass by the use of biochar. You get healthier roots. So that's why it is really good for grasses, because that's what you want, is a nice strong root mass that contributes to above ground foliage as well.
So can you put this on top of your soil, or do you have to dig it?
Great question.
Put it
ideally
on top.
Yeah, so ideally you want biochar where you have your roots. Okay, now you can do a topical application like, oh, I want it on my lawn, but does that mean I have to tear up my lawn in order to apply it? No. And that's why we have this product. Okay. So this product, it can go on as a surface application, and you don't even see it. It goes down. As soon as you water, it's going to get down. It's going to filter down into your roots. This, not so much, right? This is a lot better if you're doing kind of ground up. This is more of top downs. Okay, two different application. I made this specifically for grasses, lawns, turfs, golf courses. And then we go right up to more of a bark mulch type size, kind of a mixed size, hasn't been sifted. And that's stuff that farmers use in their manure spreaders. They put it right into their manure pit and it soaks it all up. So it's not just a big runny, sloshy mess. When they take their buckets in there and they try to dump it into their manure spreaders and it's splashing on their cab, and then it just spreads manure all the way down the road as they're driving out to the field. So this way, when they take biochar, they add it, it makes it more, it coagulates, it soaks up all that urine and makes more of a cake so that they can actually pick it up and dump it, and it makes it a lot more
Friable.
Yeah, easier to work with.
My question is, how far would that bucket for the grass go? Like how thinly do you apply it?
Yeah. In terms of garden application, I'm still working on the grass application. I want to do some trials myself.
Yeah.
In terms of the application, but because a lot of the studies that I've seen, they say by pounds. Like, well, I don't like pounds because what if it's 30% moisture content, 10% moisture content? What is the weight ratio, right? And so I sell by volume, not by weight, because I'm just selling you the volume of biochar, not water. But typically in the garden, this will do about 20 square meters.
Okay, so explain if we use this here
Please.
and the real length here.
So that's like 1 meter by 20 meters long. Okay. It's a lot. That's quite a bit.
But you don't need a lot.
In old school feet, what would that be?
It's like 3 feet by like 60 feet
Okay,
ish.
thanks.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's a lot.
So a little bit, you don't. And like I said, the chicken farmer didn't believe me. He does know. So I could take this bucket of, like, let's say this was full of water. I could take this full of water and dump it into here without it overflowing. It would just soak all the way up, and if I had this full of sand, it would overflow because it's taking up so much space. So that's a really cool little scientific study you can try at home. A little bit goes a long way. So if you have planters, they're usually like 1 meter by 2 meters or 4 feet by 8 feet or whatever. One of these is more than enough. In fact, one of these little bags, 2 of these little bags could do your standard garden box. Wow. In terms of a first application. Now, what I would do, if everyone's soil is different, everyone's gardening something a little different, biochar will typically neutralize your soil. If you have an acidic soil, this will bring the pH up to this. Biochar is typically around 7 to 8 pH. Now, if you're doing like blueberries or vacciniums that like a more acidic soil, they typically grow under our coniferous forests, which are acidic soils. You might want to add a little bit of acidity to your biochar if you're dealing with those type of plants. But typically, you want to be a good neutral soil, and biochar is going to help you do that. In some cases, it's going to drop your pH. In other cases, it might raise it. but it's going to be right around that 7.
How about just a pot, like
a hanging basket type thing?
no, or just a large pot where you're doing like a pot garden and doing your vegetables
Sure.
in pots.
So as a rule of thumb, if you have complete control over volume, you're going to put, a couple liters of your compost in there, a couple liters of this. 5 to 10% is what you're aiming for. 5%, 5 or 10% of biochar to topsoil. That's right. Okay, so if you're doing a topsoil spread 3 inches deep across your soil, well, you're going to use up a little bit more of this. When I say like 20 square meters of this is the equivalent of like basically a ton an acre. So farmers, that's how they like to think of how much tons an acre. I basically worked it right down. So at 1 ton an acre, it works out to 20 square meters per bucket. We did some local tests here in the valley, and with the corn, where it's pretty obvious as to the corn that had biochar and the corn that did not have biochar. But when we pulled stalks, we had 18 meters by 18 meter plots, and some had biochar and cow manure, some just had manure, and those were our controls. And then the whole rest of the field was a control as well. And we found that once it was basically harvesting time, we took 25 stalks of corn from each plot. We had 1 ton an acre control, 5 ton an acre control, 10 ton an acre control. And we found that in any of the plots that had biochar, 1 to 10 had 5 more cobs. So basically 1/4 more cobs than the controls. 25 stalks, you had 5 more cobs. And that's significant across an entire, quarter section.
And that's because of the water retention then?
I don't entirely.
I was going to say, well,
All I know is that I added biochar to it, and it was an unirrigated field. They didn't irrigate that field.
oh, interesting.
So it was just bare bones. They always put manure on. I said, give me as much manure as you typically apply to this, and I'm just going to add some biochar to it. And we didn't see a significant difference between 1 ton, 5 ton, and 10 tons, which tells me you can get away with 1 ton, which is the recommendation that I say start there.
Would that be an annual application or does it last through the years?
So biochar is going to stay in your soil longer than you are alive. When they found biochar, they were studying the soil in Amazon, and they found that the soil was just terrible. The worst soil in the world because of how much rain it gets. It's the Amazonian rainforest, right? And so all the nutrients was in that top, like the roots are on top of the ground. Opened up the leaves and decomposed, and that's where they got their nutrients from. The soil itself was terribly just leached right out. But then they found these plots of land with like 6 foot thick, deep black soil. I'm like, where did this come from? And then they started doing core samples. Like, this is charcoal. This is human modified soil that they made, and they called it terra preta, or black earth. And that was 2,000 years ago. They're finding chunks of biochar that they put in there 2,000 years ago. So the lifespan of biochar is hundreds to thousands of years. Now, the reason for that, the chemistry behind that, is one that is heated up. The carbon molecules within the wood rearrange themselves during high heat decomposition to create a 6-carbon benzene ring. Okay, so if you go back to school, you see all the carbons, and then you have all the hydrogens off of it. Okay, that's a very stable form of carbon that doesn't decompose very easily. Okay, so if you're wanting to add deep carbon content to your soil, you got to remember that biochar isn't as accessible as, say, leaves or bark mulch or stuff like that. Okay, that's going to decompose and is more available as a nutrient. Whereas a biochar, you're using this. Yes, it adds some carbon and it increases your carbon content, and I'll show that here. But what it does is increases the microbial activity within your soil. It boosts your microbes, but it enhances your nutrient holding capacity, and it enhances your water holding capacity. So you get way more bang for your buck using this product. In my experience, anyone that tries this product with the idea of, oh, it's just one-time application, they're like, I'm gonna try it again. I want to add a little bit more. I'm like, you bet, go for it. Biochar is so good at what it does. If you put raw biochar in your soil, it's going to charge from your soil. Now, I haven't used that word yet, charge. When you hear the word charge, what do you think?
Electricity charging up the.
Perfect. And the cells of the battery. You've heard cells of the battery, right? You're charging the cells. Well, think of biochar. All those little holes are cells. The longer you charge it, eventually it's going to get full charge, right? After that, you're not going to get 110% charge. It's just charged. So biochar, once all those little holes are filled, you can consider that fully charged. Now, your phone still works at 15%. Your garden has nutrients in it right now. It can help charge. But if you take biochar charged with nutrients and all that good stuff and put it in your soil, it's like giving all your plants a full bank account that they can draw on when they need it.
So could you do something like soak it in fish fertilizer to
Absolutely. Anything you want to put on your garden. And that's why I sell raw biochar rather than charged biochar. You can go down to other stores and you might see charged biochar. Okay. And they'll charge more for it, typically. But you're also getting, they might say, oh, it's 20% biochar and 80% chicken manure. Well, you're buying chicken manure, 20% biochar, whereas this is going to go way longer because it's concentrated. Get your chicken manure or whatever your manure might be. You know your plants. Do they want nitrogen? Do they want phosphorus? Do they want potassium, What do they want? You get the manure, compost, whatever you want to aid in what their needs are, and you apply the biochar. So the biochar is going to hold whatever you want for your plants. So you can customize your soils by using biochar. So biochar is, yeah, exactly. So let's say you have a compost tea that you've been working on, right? Back, you have your compost tea or whatever. Just pour it right in there. Add a little water. Increase that soaking capacity of all those good nutrients, and let it do its job. It's going to soak up liquid fertilizer, a couple days, and you're good. It's going to soak that up real fast. Okay. And again, with solid manure, time is your friend. Time is your friend. I would start adding it in the fall, and just when you take your compost bucket from underneath the sink, add a cup of biochar to that. It's going to bring the smell way down, so you're not even smelling your compost because it's actually absorbing the gases. And then when you just put it in there, and the biochar is already mixed in, and it's gonna increase the decomposition. It's gonna increase the temperature, the internal temperature of your manure pile by about 15 degrees, increasing the decomposition rate, increasing the microbial activity. And so instead of waiting, say, 6 months for your compost pile, you're gonna cut that significant. If you're doing your own compost, you're making your a garden box, and you're wondering, okay, well, let's start off on the right foot. Something to consider is your mixture rate from the get-go, and that is your carbon to nitrogen. Can you guys see this? Yep. Your carbon to nitrogen ratio. Okay, so you typically want between 25 and 35 carbons to nitrogens. Does that make sense? Awesome. So on this list, you'll see things that are rich in carbon and things that are rich in nitrogen, and the ratio of carbon to nitrogen. Now take your pick. A lot of people have lots of access to leaves. They have lots of access to grass clippings, and you now all have access to biochar. So if we pick those three things and we put them into an equation and say, okay, I'm going to use 2 parts leaves, I'm going to use 1 part biochar, and 10 parts grass clippings. You got lots of grass clippings. Keep track of how much grass you put in. Keep track of how much the leaves you're going to put in. So you're adding a lot of nitrogen, you're adding a lot of carbon, and what's your ratio? Okay, so you just multiply the ratio times the parts. So 60 to 1 is your leaves, 60 to 1. So you put 60 times 2 parts. Okay, so 2 buckets of leaves. And then you can do 1 bucket of biochar, and then you're going to do 10 buckets of grass. In terms of a ratio.
Are you talking about the bucket that's behind you bucket, or what size?
And just a ratio, whatever type of bucket. If you want to use this bucket, you're going to add 1 bucket of biochar. Yep. You're going to add 2 buckets of leaves and 20 buckets of lawn clippings. And if you calculate that through, you basically end up, and you want to be between 25 and 35. This is kind of a simple way to calculate some applications of your composts. There's so many different. If you Google carbon to nitrogen ratios, you might find similar tables that might have slightly different numbers. I just added biochar down at the bottom because it's not on the list, but it's about 100 to 1.